All right, everybody, we're going to be starting a brand new concept in object-oriented programming, and that is superclasses. And it sounds very fancy, but really what it is that sometimes things, objects, have commonalities between them, things that they share in common. Like, for example, the bullet, it's got locations and velocities, and so does the spaceship have locations and velocities. I would like to put a lives variable in my spaceship and in my bullet as well. There's a third thing they have in common. So, you know what? I kind of want to make it so that I don't have to program location and velocity every time. You know what? I think our asteroids will have that. Our UFO will have that. Everything I'm going to put in this game is going to have locations and velocities and lives. So I would like to make what's called a superclass. It's like a category almost of objects that can be the foundation upon which other classes are built, and the subclasses can inherit things from that superclass. It's basically let us be lazy because we can just program in things in one place and almost like copy and paste them, just like import them from that superclass. So we're going to be modifying our existing classes, spaceship and bullet, but for the better. And I intentionally have waited to this moment so that you can sort of see the need for it. Like, oh yeah, I have sort of similarities here. Let's condense them into one place. And the other thing that's going to make this great is that we can now, once we're done this, we can make almost like a game engine. Not almost, it's very much a game engine, a simple game engine that can just process everything in our game, automatically having it do its act and show type things. Okay, so let's do it. I'm going to make a new class. It's going to be kind of a generic-y thing. Generic in the sense of like, it's going to represent what do the objects in my game in general need. It's going to be kind of abstract in the same way, like terms like mammal is like an abstract term. Like you have tigers and bears and humans. They are kinds of mammals, right? There's no like thing that is just a mammal, right? The mammal is an idea, right? If you're a tiger, you're a kind of mammal, but there's no thing that is a mammal and like not a further defined, right? So that'll be sort of similar. We're going to have game objects class, game object. It'll be sort of like our umbrella term for bullets and spaceships, but it will be a larger kind of concept that we will put the commonalities inside of. So in my class game object, that's where I want to put p vector location and p vector velocity, and that's going to be, I'll put the comment in here, velocity, and we'll just put in a constructor just temporarily. We won't really do anything with it, and we'll come back to that and think about it. And then we'll also have a act and show method, and we won't put anything in there either. Void act, void show. So we'll just make them empty. So right now, as it stands, game objects are things that have locations and velocities, and then we will visit these things in a little bit. So now what have we done? We've just made a new class, but now what I can do for bullet and for spaceship is I can say the following. I can say class spaceship extends game object. So what happens when you extend a game object is that you inherit all the things from game object. So you inherit a location, you inherit a velocity, so you don't have to program that in. So for a spaceship, I can get rid of these things. It's not that they don't have them, it's just that spaceship is building on top of this foundation, so I don't have to write it again. And that's very convenient. I really like that. Same with bullet. For a bullet, I can say class bullet extends game object. And so I don't have to say it has these instance variables because it will automatically get those instance variables. So instead of typing the same thing twice, I now just type it in once. And the savings will be exponential based on how many game objects you have, right? If I make 10 more game objects, well, I don't have to type in, the p vectors for those ones either. So it's just going to save us time. Another thing that's really great is if I build something in game object, then everything that extends it will also get those things. So I can really like grow my the value or the what I get out of my effort, because I can program it once and then everything updates to have those things. So for example, in game object, I'm going to add int lives. So int lives is going to be a variable to say like how many lives does this thing have. So now bullets automatically will have lives and spaceship will have lives as well. I programmed it in one place and everything gets it. And every new future game object will also get an amount of lives. Isn't that great? It's really going to save us time in the long run. Okay. So the next thing we're going to be looking at is, what is this kind of like lame constructor here doing? All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to make the constructor a useful tool for our subclasses, a tool for spaceship, a tool for bullet, and all future game objects. I don't really need it to construct game objects because I'm not going to make something that is only a game object and is not something else. Like just like you don't have a thing that is a amorphous mammal that is not a specific kind of mammal, right? We're not going to have like rogue game objects just floating around. We'll have bullets and spaceships and all that kind of stuff. So we'll make this constructor a tool for other things to use. So for example, spaceship, I would love to be able to just say, hey, can you just build me these location and velocity vectors if I send you some numbers? So I'm going to make this game object constructor work for a spaceship. It looks like I need width divided by 2 and height divided by 2 as my location, and I need 0, 0 for my velocity. So what I think maybe I'll do is maybe I guess I see I'm making these new p vectors. So maybe what I'll do is I'll have I don't know. There's different ways to do it. So I guess I'm a bit conflicted because I can see multiple good ways of doing something, and so there is a bit of like art involved in this. So what I'm going to do is I'll do it two different ways, and you can just decide if you want to do it two different ways. If you want to pick one specific way or another specific way, I'll give you all the choices, and you can make your choice. So here's one example. One of them I'll do like this. I'll make a parameters in this constructor. I'll say float LX for location X, float LY for location Y. I'll make a float VX and a float VY for my velocity X and Y. And when I receive those things, I'll just plug them into instantiating the p vectors. So something, basically doing like something like this, but I'll do it over here. And I'll put in LX, LY, and I'll put in VX and VY. So what I've done is I've made this more abstract. For the spaceship, there's specific numbers I want to give it, but maybe my asteroid will want different numbers. So my asteroid could call this constructor, my spaceship can call this constructor, but it can send different numbers. So I don't have to reprogram the constructor over and over again. So how does a subclass like spaceship call that superclass's constructor? You use the super keyword. The super keyword is pretty fantastic. It sounds great, right? And it's like this. So you just have to call one of the constructors available in GameObject and send it the right parameters. So I only have one right now, so it's the one that wants 4 floats. So I'll send it 4 floats. So when I make my spaceship, instead of using those lines of code, I'll send it. First, the location was width divided by 2, height divided by 2, and then 0 and 0 for the velocity. So now I can just send that information to the superclass, and it will receive that information here and make those p vectors for me. So that's handy. When I make an asteroid, the asteroids constructor can call super as well, and I can send it whatever numbers. Maybe this can be random because it's whatever. Notice that I still am using the direction p vector. I still have that here in spaceship because directions are unique to spaceships. I don't have a direction for bullets. So like that's not part of the game object. It's not something that's common between everything. It's its own unique thing. So the spaceship's constructor will still have to deal with direction. But that's fine. We can live with that. Remember that the class you're extending is really a foundation that you're building upon, but you can build more than just a foundation. You can build additional things on top of that foundation. So that's what direction is for spaceship. Okay. Now, going over to bullets a little bit different, right? I do have this information here, so that's great. But in some ways, I kind of would love to just send it these vectors. I'd love to send it a copy of the player's location and a copy of the player's direction. That would be nice. I would really like to do that. Actually, I'm not sure why I didn't do that here either. I could have done player1.location.copy because I just stole it from that thing. So I think that would be great to be able to do that as well. So instead of kind of deciding like, well, I have to do it one way or another, we can make multiple constructors inside of our game object so that we can just use whichever one we want to use. If you'd rather just use this one, then you definitely please feel free inside of bullet to call that constructor and just send it the 4 numbers. That will work just fine. But just to show you that possibility, I'll go ahead and do it. To make a second constructor, you just go and make a second constructor. Game object, right? That is also a constructor. The name matches with the class. And what we're going to do now is put in different parameters. We'll put in p vectors, p vector L, and p vector v for location and velocity. And we'll just receive those as parameters, and we'll set location to L and velocity to v. So now, these are just like 2 different choices now. They won't both happen. Only one or the other will happen, and we can choose which ones our subclasses use based on what information we send it. When the spaceship builds itself, well, we send 4 numbers, right? So then the spaceship will use this constructor. And when the bullet constructs itself, well, why don't we do the second constructor? We'll say super, and then we'll send it player1.location.copy, and we'll send it, I missed the 1, and player1.velocity.copy. So we're going to send those vectors over, and game object sees is getting 2 p vectors, so it will use this constructor instead. So that's the story. That's what's going on. So we've just given ourselves multiple ways to work with it. I still need to set the magnitude of the velocity of the bullet inside of the bullet superclass, because that's not something that every game object needs to do. It's not part of the foundation. It's something we're building on top of the foundation. So a constructor can be a mix of like using the foundation and doing its own unique things, just like spaceship also uses the foundation and does its own unique things. Okay, so we're doing good. Things are nice. In the next video, we're gonna see this in action, and we're gonna put things together and officially create our game engine, our extendable, expandable, all-purpose game engine that we're going to use throughout the rest of this project and other projects. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be a big moment. Okay, thanks everybody.